Are you ready to know the truth? We grew up with the idea that our existence is a stroke of luck, that we won a cosmic lottery where the chance of winning was 1 in infinity. But what if there was no lottery? What if the cards were already marked even before the first star began to burn? We are starting to dismantle the official narrative of the world. For this, we use a tool devoid of human fears and prejudices, an advanced artificial intelligence called Pneuma. Into its neural circuits, we inserted the fundamental constants of the universe, the parameters of our galaxy, and the characteristics of the solar system. The task was simple. Calculate the probability of Earth and its conditions having arisen by accident. The answer it gave us is blood-curdling. Looking at the foundation of our world, the very fabric that makes up reality, something strange emerges. Scientists call this the fine-tuning of the universe, or the habitable zone paradox. Everything in our world is not too hot nor too cold, not too heavy nor too light. Everything seems perfectly adjusted for life. It was just luck, they tell us, but the details tell a different story. There are certain fundamental physical constants, numbers that dictate how matter behaves. The gravitational constant, for example, if it were just 1/1,000,000th stronger, the universe would have collapsed on itself shortly after the initial great expansion. No stars, no galaxies, just an infinitely hot point. If it were the same fraction weaker, matter would have spread so fast that atoms would never have clumped together to form stars. The universe would be a cold, dark, and empty place, filled only by fine dust. The probability of gravity having hit this exact value fortuitously is, according to calculations, the same as you throwing a dart from one side of the observable universe and hitting a 1 centimeter coin on the other side. And that is just one constant. There are dozens. Take the strong nuclear force, the glue that holds protons and neutrons together in the nucleus of an atom. If it were just 2% weaker, hydrogen would never turn into deuterium. Stars like our sun simply would not ignite. The universe would have nothing but hydrogen. If it were 2% stronger, all the hydrogen would have burned in the first few minutes of the universe's existence. The result would be the same: a dead world, without water, without carbon, without life. Pneuma's algorithms cross-analyzed all these constants simultaneously. The conclusion was that these parameters cannot be independent. They seem adjusted on a single control panel, where someone or something moved each knob to the only possible position that allows the existence of complex matter. The verdict is unequivocal. The mathematical model that assumes a random origin for these parameters shows a statistical error tending to absolute zero. This was not an accident. It was a calibration. Descending from the cosmic level to our backyard, the Milky Way, the exact location of our address raises suspicions. We live in the so-called galactic habitable zone, a very narrow ring within the galaxy's disk. If our solar system were closer to the center, we would be annihilated by radiation. The star density there is so high that the night sky would be brighter than our day, and constant supernova explosions would sterilize any planet every few million years. The galactic center houses a supermassive black hole, Sagittarius A, a colossal source of radiation. Life there is impossible, but at the edges of the galaxy, life is also impossible. There are very few heavy elements. The metallicity of the stars is insignificant. There is simply no material to build rocky planets. We are in a safe harbor, perfectly distant from the dangerous center and the desert edges. Furthermore, our solar system has a unique characteristic. We are between the spiral arms of the galaxy in the so-called Orion Arm. The spiral arms are zones of active star formation, dangerous areas full of chaos. We move at a speed that keeps us in sync with the galaxy's rotation, avoiding entering these turbulent regions. This orbital synchrony is found in less than 5% of stars. Now let's look at our star, the Sun. Our perception is of an ordinary star, but the reality is another. Most stars in our galaxy are red dwarfs. They are small, cold, and live a long time, but they are unstable. They emit monstrous flares that would strip the atmosphere of any nearby planet. Living near a red dwarf would be like living inside a microwave with the door open. The other type is blue giants. They live only a few million years and explode. Life simply wouldn't have time to start. Our Sun is a yellow dwarf, a flawless battery. It has been burning steadily without brightness spikes for 4.5 billion years. And it is abnormally stable, even for its class. It is as if it operated with an artificial power limiter designed not to harm its protégés. Putting all this together, we have a scenario that defies the logic of luck. The right universe, the right galaxy, the right place in the galaxy, and the right star. It doesn't just seem like we found a safe place. It seems like this place was prepared. We are not tourists who found an oasis by chance. We are residents of a custom-built environment, a planetary incubator. The walls of this incubator are made of physics and astrophysics, so vast that we never thought to look for them. But if this is our prepared home, it should have a surveillance system, a camera that watches us 24 hours a day. And that camera hangs right above our heads. Every night you look up at the sky and see it. A pale, cold disk hovering above our heads. Poets have celebrated it for millennia, lovers have made promises under its light, and sailors have used it to navigate endless oceans. The moon, the most familiar object in our night sky. The story they tell us is that it is just a piece of rock, dead and silent, a faithful companion of Earth, formed billions of years ago in a cosmic catastrophe. But what if everything you know about the moon is just a facade? What if, by the laws of astrophysics, this object had no right to be where it is? The most obvious fact is right before our eyes, something we see but rarely question. A total solar eclipse is an incredible spectacle when the disk of the moon perfectly covers the disk of the sun. The star's corona remains visible, but the sphere of fire is completely blocked. Do you know the math behind this coincidence? The sun's diameter is about 1,392,000 kilometers. The moon's is 3,474. The sun is exactly 400 times larger than the moon, and at the same time is exactly 400 times farther from Earth. It is because of this exact proportion, 400 to 1 in both cases, that their apparent sizes in our sky are identical. There is no other planet in our system with this coincidence. Not Jupiter, not Saturn, not Mars. Their eclipses looked like a small dot passing over a giant disk. Only Earth received this flawless cosmic trick. It seems less like a coincidence and more like a calibration, a mark, as if someone wanted to draw our attention to this object, forcing us to ask, how is this possible? Now let's look at its orbit. All natural satellites move in elliptical orbits. It's a law of celestial mechanics. Gravity is a brute force. It stretches orbits, but the moon is special. Its orbit is a nearly perfect circle. Earth is simply too small to capture and hold such a massive body in such a stable trajectory. The moon is more than 1% of Earth's mass, a gigantic proportion. Mars's satellites are tiny asteroids in comparison. Earth and the moon behave less like a planet and its satellite, and more like a double planetary system. The moon wasn't captured. It seems to have been parked with meticulous precision. We inserted all known data about the moon into NUMA, its orbit, density, composition, and seismic activity. The artificial intelligence's verdict is direct. The moon is a singularity. The probability of its natural formation with the current parameters borders on statistical impossibility. The most shocking evidence came from inside it. In November 1969, the Apollo 12 crew deliberately crashed the ascent module onto the lunar surface. It was a planned experiment to test the seismometers. The module, weighing 2.5 tons, collided with the moon at over 6,000 km/h. What happened next left NASA in a state of shock. The moon rang. What happened was not a metaphor. The seismometers recorded vibrations not for minutes, but for more than an hour. The moon vibrated like a giant bell. The seismic wave did not dissipate, as would happen in a solid rocky body. It traveled across the surface, echoing. Ken Johnston, who at the time was supervisor of the Data and Photo Control Department at NASA, said the famous phrase, "The moon rang like a bell." This would only be possible if it were hollow inside. Later experiments with even stronger impacts confirmed this. The moon rang for over 3 hours. Analysis of these waves suggests that they propagate through a metallic shell that surrounds a low-density core, or perhaps even a large void. This would explain its overall low density and another of its mysteries: the craters. Look at the pictures of the moon. There are craters hundreds of kilometers in diameter. An impact of that magnitude should create a hole tens of kilometers deep. But lunar craters are surprisingly shallow. The bottom of the largest craters is flat, as if the object had hit an impenetrable barrier beneath the dust layer, a shield, and to top it off, it stares at us. The moon is in synchronous rotation, which means we always see the same face. The far side remained a mystery until the space age. Engineers know that if you want to build an observation station, you lock it in an orientation with the sensors always pointing at the target. The opposite shielded side takes the impacts from deep space, and indeed, the far side of the moon is much more heavily bombarded by craters. It is our shield. But what is the main function of this object? Stabilization. Without the moon, Earth would spin wildly. Days would be only 6 hours long. Winds of 500 km/h would sweep the planet. Earth's axis would shift chaotically, turning forests into glaciers in a matter of years. Life more complex than bacteria would not survive. The moon works as a gyroscope and a brake. It slowed Earth's rotation to a comfortable 24 hours and keeps our axis stable. It creates the tides that allowed life to leave the ocean. The object we call the moon seems to be an artificial planetary stabilizer and a monitoring module. Someone hung it over our crib. Someone built the perfect room. But even the safest and most stable room in the universe is useless without the essential element that sustains life. An element that, according to all the rules of planetary formation, shouldn't exist here in abundance. We are talking about water. When looking at a simple glass of water, we see a transparent, tasteless liquid. We take it for granted. We wash our hands with it, water the plants, quench our thirst. For us, water is the backdrop of existence, something banal. But from the point of view of chemistry and astrophysics, what is in that glass is the most mysterious substance in the universe. And its presence on this planet in such abundance is a complete violation of the rules. We have already established that the foundation of our world, the orbit, the star, the satellite, was carefully designed. But an empty house, even with the perfect climate, is useless if there is nothing to drink. This brings us to the life support system, the liquid that makes Earth a blue pearl in a dark void. The question is simple: where did all this water come from? To understand the magnitude of the problem, we need to go back 4.5 billion years in time to the birth of our planet. Early Earth was a scorching hell, a magma ocean. In the formation of a star system, there is an imaginary boundary called the frost line. Inside this line, close to the star's heat, it is too hot for water to exist in a liquid or solid state. Earth was born well inside this dry zone. It should be a barren rock, like a brick fresh out of a cosmic oven. Any water that was here at the beginning would have evaporated and been swept into space. So, where did it come from? Official science proposes a solution: the late heavy bombardment. The theory says that after the planet cooled a bit, a rain of icy comets and asteroids hit it, bringing water like a cosmic delivery. It seems logical, but only on the surface. To fill our oceans, millions of concentrated impacts would be needed within a very specific time window. This does not sound like an accident. It seems more like a scheduled irrigation. The definitive clue, however, is in chemistry. The water molecule is composed of hydrogen and oxygen, but hydrogen has a heavy version called deuterium. The ratio between common and heavy hydrogen works like a fingerprint, revealing the origin of the water. When we analyze the water from comets, we find that their signature does not match ours. Their water is much heavier. The math simply doesn't add up. Main belt asteroids, on the other hand, have chemically similar water, but they are rocks with very little water. To fill the oceans with them, the bombardment would have been so brutal that it would melt the planet's crust again, making the water evaporate. It is a dead end. Newma's artificial intelligence analysis of this paradox was conclusive. The presence of water on our planet, in its current volume, is a statistical irregularity. The recommended hypothesis is that of controlled external delivery, and the story gets stranger. We recently discovered that there is an entire ocean, perhaps 3 times larger than all the surface ones, locked in minerals in the Earth's mantle, hundreds of kilometers deep. It is as if the planet had not just been wetted on the outside, but saturated on the inside like a sponge. Water didn't just arrive, it was injected into the system. The very nature of water is an inexplicable phenomenon. Almost all substances in the universe become denser when they freeze. The solid sinks in the liquid. Water does the opposite. Upon freezing, it expands and ice floats. Think about what would happen if water were normal. The ice that forms in winter would sink. Over time, our rivers, lakes, and oceans would freeze from the bottom up, turning Earth into a massive ball of ice. Life would be impossible. This property seems less like a quirk of physics and more like a safety feature, programmed to ensure that the incubator does not freeze. Water is not a geological accident, it is a technological fluid, the cooling and life support system of the reactor called Earth. Someone brought this resource, filled the bathtub, adjusted the temperature, and checked the chemistry. Everything was ready. The stage was set, the scenery positioned, the lights on. All that remained was to release the main actors. But who are they and where did they come from? It's like watching a loading bar. For hours, it advances agonizingly. 1%, 2%, 3%. The screen is black, and suddenly, in the blink of an eye, the bar jumps from 3 to 100%. The world explodes in complex colors and shapes, with thousands of unique characters appearing instantaneously, already complete. No gradual creation process works like this. This only happens when a ready-made data package is installed all at once. There is a dark secret hidden in paleontology, an event that Charles Darwin himself considered the greatest threat to his theory. Science calls it the Cambrian explosion. Let's go back in time, a very long time indeed, for almost 3 billion years, a period of time that our minds can barely conceive. Earth was the planet of slime. The life that existed here was composed of single-celled bacteria. They formed sticky mats and very slowly filled the atmosphere with oxygen. Scientists call this period the boring billion. Evolution seemed to be asleep. No complexity, just the copying of the same primitive cell for eons. And then, about 541 million years ago, something impossible happened in the geological records. In a layer that represents a blink of an eye in the planet's history, the fossils of almost all the major groups of animals we know today suddenly appeared. Arthropods, chordates, mollusks. They had complex eyes, skeletons, shells, legs, and teeth. It wasn't a gradual development, it was an apparition. Darwin, in his work on the origin of species, wrote that he could not give a satisfactory answer for the absence of fossils showing the transition to this complexity. He hoped that future discoveries would fill this gap. 150 years have passed. We have excavated the planet from end to end, and the missing links remain missing. They simply do not exist. The artificial intelligence calculated how long evolution by random mutations would take to transform a single-celled organism into something like a trilobite, one of the most complex animals of that period. The answer, at least 800 million years under ideal conditions. Nature had a maximum of 20 million. The discrepancy is 40 times. The system's conclusion is clear. The speed of morphological changes exceeds the maximum limit of biological mutation. The event bears the characteristics of an artificial introduction of ready-made genotypes. Let's look at one of the heroes of that era, the trilobite. Its eyes are a masterpiece of engineering that baffles experts to this day. The lenses of the trilobite's eyes were not made of protein like ours, but of calcite, a mineral crystal. The problem with calcite is that it causes double vision, but trilobites saw perfectly. How? Their eyes were composed of two different lenses, glued together to correct the distortions. Humanity only invented this technology in the 17th century. How did blind evolution, which works by trial and error, create on the first try an eye that utilizes advanced principles of optics and crystallography? There are no fossils of half-trilobites with bad vision. They appeared on the scene already fully equipped. This transcends evolution. It is pure technology, and it wasn't just them. In that primordial ocean, a predator called Anomalocaris emerged. It had complex faceted eyes on stalks with 16,000 lenses each. Where did it come from? There are no known ancestors. It simply appeared to dominate. The pattern is evident. It looks like the launch of an ecosystem with predefined roles. The role of cleaner was assigned to the trilobite, that of predator to Anomalocaris. But before all this, life on Earth was different. Life in the Ediacaran period was formed by strange, soft-bodied creatures that looked like quilts or discs. They had no mouths or eyes. They just absorbed nutrients, and shortly before the Cambrian, they disappeared. They were completely erased. They did not evolve into the new animals. It looks like a disk formatting. Ediacaran life was a test version. The creators evaluated the behavior of the biomass under Earth's conditions, but realized that those creatures were a dead end. They were too passive, without the potential to develop intelligence. So, the project was shut down, the disk was wiped, and version 2.0 was installed, aggressive, fast, with vision and armor. For the first time in the planet's history, predation emerged. Before, the world was a peaceful garden. From the Cambrian onwards, an arms race began. Conflict is the engine of progress. In an environment without competition, evolution stagnates. To create intelligence, matter must be forced to fight for survival. The project of installing the planetary biosphere was complete. We are the direct descendants of those who were disembarked in the Cambrian. The legacy of that moment is in our spine, in the structure of our eyes. The bodies were created, but where are the blueprints? Where are the instructions that govern their assembly? The instructions are inside us, in each of our cells. When you look at your own hand, you see skin, veins, muscles. You feel heat. You believe you are made of flesh and bone, of biological matter. But that is the greatest illusion we live in. If we could magnify the image of your hand millions of times, we would pass through the cells, cross the nuclei, and arrive at what truly makes up your essence. We would arrive at a text. Yes, you heard right. At the base of every living being on this planet is not magic or random chemistry, but a text, an instruction, a code. We call it the genetic code, but the name does not capture the true nature of the thing. Genetics is an incredibly complex digital recording system. Deepening the analysis, we will examine the genetic code not as biological material, but as a vast set of data, in the same way that a cryptographer analyzes an intercepted enemy message. Science tells us that life arose in a primordial soup, chemical elements combined randomly for billions of years until, by chance, a molecule capable of replicating itself appeared. Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, once said that the genetic code is like a computer program, but far more advanced than anything humans have ever created. Think about that phrase. If you walk along the beach and see the phrase, "John loves Mary," written in the sand, you don't assume that the waves and crabs formed the letters by chance. You know that the message had an intelligent author because it carries information. The genetic code is an information carrier. It uses a four-letter alphabet: adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. It is a base 4 system. Computers use a binary system with zeros and ones. Genetics uses 4. In every cell of your body, there are over 3 billion letters of this code. If we were to print the genome of a single person, we would have a stack of books as tall as a 50-story building. And in this gigantic text, there is no chaos. There is a rigorous order. Instructions on how to build a heart, how to make a liver work, what eye color to have. The probability of these 3 billion letters aligning in a meaningful sequence by blind luck is 0. The famous astrophysicist Fred Hoyle compared the chance of the spontaneous assembly of the genetic code to a hurricane passing through a junkyard and randomly assembling a fully functional Boeing 747. Numa confirms randomness is mathematically ruled out. This is not a lottery, it is engineering. But the deepest problem is a chicken and egg paradox at the molecular level. The genetic code is the instruction to build proteins. But to read this instruction and assemble a protein, you need other proteins, enzymes. Without the tool proteins, the genetic code is useless because there is no one to read it. And without the genetic code, proteins cannot arise because there is no instruction. They needed to appear at the same time, already functioning. In any logical system, this can only be solved by an external agent, a programmer who creates both the code and the reader and initiates the system. Now let's talk about storage density. This is what shocks technology experts. Humanity prides itself on its hard drives and cloud storage, but we are primitive compared to the author of genetics. In a single gram of genetic material, it is possible to store 215 million GB of information. All the information ever created by humanity, all the books, movies, and internet databases would fit into a volume of genetic material the size of a teaspoon. The technology achieved absolute perfection from the start. Evolution did not improve it. How is this possible if everything should have evolved from the simple to the complex? But the most intriguing discovery concerns what is called non-coding genetics. When the human genome was deciphered, scientists were perplexed. Only 2% of the entire code contains the instructions to build our body, and the other 98%. For a long time, they were called junk. Remains of ancient viruses, useless accumulated fragments. But nature is extremely efficient. It would not spend colossal energy to copy 98% of useless text every time a cell divides. Far from being white noise or chaos, what we find in this useless part is a structure. It is a text that obeys linguistic laws, like any human language. The most logical hypothesis is that this non-coding part is a library of dormant functions. In these 98% could be the instructions to regenerate limbs, breathe underwater, or have total immunity to radiation. These functions are simply turned off, deactivated. We are a limited version of ourselves. Furthermore, a signature was found in our genetic code, a rigid mathematical pattern based on the number 37, which appears consistently and could not have arisen naturally. It is a digital watermark, a made-in stamp. We search for signs of intelligent life, pointing radio telescopes at the stars, but the signal has always been inside us. The code is the same for all organisms on Earth. The language is the same. This indicates a single developer, a single project, a single platform. You are not a random clump of cells. You are the carrier of the most sophisticated code in the universe. Your body is the machine. Your genome is the program. It was written by a genius programmer. But if the program is so perfect, why does it fail? Why do species go extinct? Because sometimes the entire system collapses. In any complex computer simulation, there comes a time when the virtual empire grows too large and begins to fail. Cities stagnate, characters freeze, progress stops. What do? You don't try to fix each individual. You click New Game, or if you are a more radical player, you cause an apocalypse to see who survives and start from scratch. We tend to view Earth's history as a straight line of progress from bacteria to humans, but fossils paint a different picture. It is not a line. It is the electrocardiogram of a patient in cardiac arrest. The history of life is a series of blossomings followed by total and instantaneous annihilations. This opens the darkest chapter of our investigation: mass extinctions. The standard narrative says they were tragic accidents. An asteroid in the wrong place at the wrong time. A supervolcano that decided to wake up. But when we inserted the chronology of these events into the NUMA artificial intelligence, asking it to find a pattern, the answer redefines the concept of catastrophe. The system's conclusion stated that mass extinction events exhibit rigorous cyclicity and functional directionality. The probability of a random distribution of these events in time is less than 0.001%. The system classified the event as a system reboot. In the last 500 million years, life on Earth has been almost totally annihilated 5 times. It is the so-called Big Five. Between these events, there is a strange rhythm, a cycle of approximately 26 to 30 million years. It looks like a maintenance schedule, as if a disinfection team visited the planet at regular intervals. Let's analyze the most famous event, the death of the dinosaurs. The story we know is of the asteroid of the Chicxulub crater, 10 kilometers in diameter, which hit the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The dust rose, the sun was blocked, and the dinosaurs died of cold and starvation. It seems like an accident, but the ballistic analysis of the impact tells another story. First, the angle. The asteroid entered the atmosphere at about 60 degrees, the most lethal angle possible, which maximizes the amount of dust and soot launched into the atmosphere. Second, the location. Out of the entire surface of the Earth, 70% covered by oceans, it hit exactly a sulfur-rich spot. The impact vaporized these rocks, launching billions of tons of sulfur compounds into the stratosphere, which turned the atmosphere into a mirror that reflected solar light and caused acid rain that dissolved marine life. The simulation is clear. If the asteroid had arrived a few minutes earlier or later, it would have fallen into the deep ocean. The water would have absorbed most of the energy, and the dinosaurs probably would have survived. But the impact hit the planet's geological Achilles heel. It does not seem like luck. It seems like a kinetic attack of impeccable precision. A sniper shot from space. But why? Why eliminate the dinosaurs? They dominated the planet for 160 million years. They were perfect survival machines, but they had a problem. They stagnated. In all that time, they did not develop civilization. They did not build cities. Their brains remained tiny. From a creator's point of view, the experiment had reached a dead end. Biomass was being spent to maintain giant carcasses that did not generate intelligence. Project Dinosaur was considered a failure. It was necessary to make room for a new class of creatures, the mammals. Our ancestors already existed, but they were small beings hiding in burrows. Dinosaurs occupied all ecological niches, preventing their development. To give the intelligent ones a chance, it was necessary to remove the strong. The purge wiped the dinosaurs from the face of the earth, but strangely spared our small ancestors. It was a selective eradication. Every time after one of these catastrophes, life does not recover slowly. It explodes into new, more complex forms. After the extinction of the dinosaurs came the rise of the mammals. It seems the architect already had new models ready in the lab, just waiting for the stage to be cleared to release them. This brings us to the final question. Where are we on this schedule? Many scientists say we are living through the sixth mass extinction caused by us. But what if we are just the tool? What if our function is, ironically, to prepare the ground for the next reboot? If we look at the sequence of extinctions, we see a clear vector. Each purge removed brute force and paved the way for more complex behavior. From giant reptiles to warm-blooded mammals, and finally, from mammals to a creature with a highly developed brain. Man. The Creator seems to be looking for something specific, pruning the excess like a sculptor. The goal was intelligence, but why is our intelligence so important, and why did it appear so suddenly? The human brain is another biological exception. It consumes a quarter of all our body's energy, despite representing only 2% of our weight. In nature, such an expensive organ is a dangerous luxury. Evolution, which values economy, shouldn't have created something so inefficient. Unless it wasn't evolution, unless someone overclocked our central processor on purpose. Upon approaching the mirror, look into your own eyes. What do you see? The pinnacle of evolution, the king of nature. The truth is that you are looking at a biological paradox, a creature that shouldn't exist. If Earth is indeed an artificial incubator and the biosphere a managed program, every program needs an operator, someone to execute the work. Let's analyze the most mysterious object in the universe, your own brain. Science says we evolved from primates. We stood up, picked up a tool, and labor made us human. But physics and genetics tell a story of intervention. The human brain, with only 2% of body mass, consumes a quarter of all our energy. For nature, where economy is law, such an expensive organ is evolutionary suicide. It makes us fragile at birth, and its capabilities are excessive for simple survival. To escape a predator, you don't need to compose a symphony. Our intellect is an overkill. It feels like a forced update, installed without worrying about battery consumption. The proof is in our genetics. All great apes, chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, have 48 chromosomes. We have 46. Where did the missing pair go? It didn't disappear. Our chromosome number 2 is in fact two primate chromosomes fused end to end. The seam of this fusion is visible to this day in our code. The probability of such a drastic event happening by chance and resulting in a more advanced species rather than extinction is practically zero. It was an operation, a manipulation of a primate genome. Someone gave us an upgraded brain. But what for? Ancient Sumerian texts say that the gods, the Anunnaki, created humans to be workers. If Earth is a laboratory or a mine, the creators needed a workforce. Taking a local primate already adapted to the environment and overclocking its brain so it could follow complex orders would be the perfect solution. We are a hybrid, an earthly body with a mind that does not fully belong to this place. We are the only species that does not live in harmony with the planet. We modify it to serve us. We get backaches from walking upright because our skeleton hasn't fully adapted. We are a recent experiment, an operator created for a specific function. But if we are the workers, where is the workplace? Where are the machines they gave us to operate? They are scattered all over the planet, disguised as ancient monuments. We are standing before the Great Pyramid of Giza. They say it is the tomb of Pharaoh Khufu, that thousands of slaves dragged blocks of tens of tons with ropes. Engineering analysis, however, destroys this fantasy. The blocks of the pyramid are fitted together with a precision that prevents the passage of a razor blade. This precision is unnecessary for a tomb. It is required in high-performance machines. Inside it, there are boxes of granite and diorite, one of the hardest rocks on Earth, cut with an ease that suggests ultrasonic tools, hundreds of times more efficient than ours. This is not a tomb. It is a machine. From Peru to Cambodia, we see the same story. Gigantic stones of hundreds of tons molded as if they were clay and fitted into three-dimensional puzzles. And most revealing of all, if you draw a line on the globe, all the major megalithic sites in the world, Giza, Easter Island, Nazca, Angkor Wat, are aligned on it. They are not isolated monuments. They are part of a global network, an infrastructure. The Great Pyramid, with its quartz-rich composition and its relationship with underground aquifers, behaves like an immense power generator. We live on the ruins of an ancient industrial plant. When the gods left, we, their workers, began to imitate their machines with clay and bricks, creating temples in honor of the technology we did not understand. But if it was a factory, what did it produce? The answer may lie in our inexplicable obsession with gold, a soft metal, useless for tools but perfect for high technology. Numa's final analysis cross-references all the irregularities and leaves us with three possible scenarios for our reality. The first scenario suggests that the architect is a super-civilization. They seed life throughout the galaxy, create worker species to extract resources, and leaving behind monitoring systems like the moon. The second possibility proposes that we are the architect, humanity from a distant future, traveling back in time to guarantee our own existence, correcting history, and accelerating our evolution. We created ourselves. The third and most disturbing possibility is the simulation. The universe, with its mathematical laws and its speed of light limit, behaves like a computational environment. Earth is a server. Life is a program. We are autonomous characters within a game of cosmic scale. Whatever the truth, the conclusion is the same. We are not here by chance. Our life has a purpose, but there is a variable that the architect may not have foreseen: consciousness. The moment the game character realizes they are in a game, we are starting to wake up. We are deciphering our own code, building our own artificial intelligence. We are approaching the creator's level, and this is the most dangerous moment. Either we will be invited to leave the incubator or the system will be rebooted for the 6th time. Now, when you look in the mirror, the question is no longer who am I, but what am I? And you have already started looking for the exit. If you enjoyed this investigation, your subscription to the channel and any donation amount helps us expand Project Pneuma. We would love to read your reflections on the video's subject in the comments and your suggestion for the next topic to be covered. Tell us from which city you are watching. Thank you for your company until the end. M.